I always write a little saying or quote or something inspirational in the front of my notebooks. And this particular notation, I don't even know if it's a quote. I don't even know where it came from. The dark is not your enemy. It is the womb of creation. Step into it and you will find your strength. I had a panel of guests come on the podcast yesterday, and we talked about our experiences in the forest. Now, the forest comes from a writing that I wrote a while back, and it's called Child and Woman, and I am making a series on this with my Shame Out Loud series. We're talking about shame. We're talking about the power of shame. We're talking about all of the emotions that are underneath this experience of shame that we all have. And the reality of we aren't born with shame. Shame's been given to us. It's been put onto us. It is not how we are originally made. And if you are listening to this and you have felt like you don't belong, that you're not enough, that you're not lovable, and life experiences have done that to you, have told you that, then this may be for you. And I want to say, the piece that I wrote is regarding sexual assault, and I'll call it essay from now on, but I just wanted to be clear about that. And it's not something that, I want you to, it's not revealing. I'm not reliving any story, let me tell you. But what I am doing is I am allowing for the light of healing power to come into my life. And so I sent this, I had Tammy Valicenti on my show, and she and I were talking about a few things to do with EMDR and her work called Transform Solution. So Transform Solution. Forgive me for being slow. I just have had a very busy few days doing all of the work here for making this panel and all the different pieces. And the beauty of what she does is she works with the spaces inside of us that are disconnected. Some might say broken. I wouldn't say broken. I'd say bruised. I'd say dissociative. That's kind of what I would think there. And so I had Tammy on as a co-host for the Shame Out Loud podcast on Child and Woman. And together we brought on 2 guests, and next month we're bringing on 2 more to talk all about this forest that we are in. Now, when I was writing, I wrote about a forest, and I want to just explain that quickly so that you understand and have some backdrop here. But the forest for me was, as the writing poured out of me, as the writing was a part of the story that was coming out of my body, when you begin to find your stillness, when you begin to find your rest, when you sit and think, the body then speaks. And a lot of us are afraid of sitting in stillness. A lot of us are afraid of listening to our body speak. And because we know what's in there, we know what's in there. And for me, I know that SA is in there. I know it's deep down in the nooks and crannies of my cells, and it expresses itself sometimes, but it doesn't really want to come out. And so when I was in a middle of a crisis, this poured out of me in writing, and it was in the middle of the night, and I just started writing, and this is what happened. And I, as I don't want to say I'm a victim of SA, and I don't want to say I'm a survivor of SA. I want to say I made it through. I took what I had left, and I said, I'm going to find my way out of this. And through this writing, I did. And then I return back in again, and I go back to finding my way, and then I come back into myself again. And I think there's a lot of ideas out there about how we connect to ourselves in the middle of trauma. And I want to say that I know that trauma is a very difficult thing for people. We've all suffered in different ways, and it is a very difficult thing to move beyond. I was talking with a guest. This is not a sidebar, but this is actually really important to this conversation. I was talking with a guest, Rihanna Milne, and she is, triple master's degree in psychology, and she was telling me that there's 10 traumas and that they know of, that if you look at anyone's life, one of these or all of these or some of these will impact anybody, anywhere. And so it's really about understanding that we are all impacted in one way or another by some form of trauma. And for me, there were a few traumas in my life and few big things. But the biggest one was SA. And so I wrote this piece as a young woman looking in a mirror and saw the reflection of myself. And anything was better than like going away from myself. Leaving who I was way better than what I experienced. And so in the mirror, this girl turns and walks away into a forest. And then as the writing goes on, it's years later, decades, where this young girl emerges out of the forest, and she finds a pond, and she's parched with thirst, and she kneels by the pond and sees a reflection in the water of a woman. And she learns that it's her, that she's been in the forest for decades. And that is the story of how trauma impacts us. I wrote from an essay perspective, but yesterday, the beauty of this is that we had Tammy Valicenti, Karina Ghosh, Dr. Laura Barbier, and myself. And Dr. Laura and I both have experience with sexual assault, and Karina and Tammy have experience with, Tammy had an alcoholic father and a codependent mother, and Karina was just parentified and had a toxic family upbringing. Her family, there was infidelity, there was all kinds of things, and she was a young girl that believed that she had to make it through by being perfect and holding everything together. And the effects of that trauma of living in a toxic environment with a family of origin that didn't care about how you feel, that's a forest too. And so I was pleased to know, and quite moved actually, that the writing and the sacredness of what I wrote was able to transfer to people in general, that it wasn't just about SA, it's actually about when trauma comes to us and the forest of our life and how it can impact. We can walk away from ourselves because the pain is too much, but we also can come home to ourselves. We can find our safety in ourselves again. There is hope. And it was really, really interesting because yesterday you got to listen to this. I want to be directive. It is a must listen. And I believe that I've produced this quite well, and I'm really proud of myself. But I want to say why I'm proud of myself, because I've never, ever in my entire life, I'm going to be 50 this year, outside of birthing children and being unbelievably proud of a 30-year marriage that I have with my partner, outside of that, I've never been proud. I've never been proud of my work, who I am, the effort that I put in. I've never been proud. And yesterday, that's my Nymeria. Yesterday, I felt this overwhelming sense of pride, and I kind of didn't know at first, like, what am I experiencing? What is actually happening to me? It was weird, and then I realized as I was talking with the panelists, oh my gosh, this is pride. I feel proud. And what a treat that was. But I want to just say that so many of us live in a space where we have gaslit ourselves into believing that we are nothing. We have gaslit ourselves into believing that we don't have value, that we don't have purpose. And I'm here to tell you, through my own journey, my own life's work, that you have purpose and we can find it. If you don't know how, that's why I'm doing my podcast. That's why I'm doing this work. I recently wrote, I can't actually remember right now what episode it is. I'm on Spotify. It's called Fool. And that's one of my other writings. And we are going to do a series on that with the Shame Out Loud series as well. The reason why we're going to do that is because I feel like many of us came from families of origin that were toxic. Many of us came out of those spaces, and we just don't know how to interact with our life, where we are entangled by other people and their motive or their anger, their own shame, and their lack of belonging that they put onto us. And then we live in it, and then we almost feel like we're dying in it. So I wrote Fool, and that's on my Spotify playlist, part 1 and part 2. But this is Child and Woman, and it's coming back to yourself. You can find yourself again, and you can find yourself in the most unexpected places. And so I just wanted to encourage you this morning, as I'm sitting in the sunlight, you can see the sun's on my back. I'm actually now sweating profusely. I'm like, good Lord. But I'm just full. And I want you to be full too. And I am so excited to offer to you the most beautiful treasure trove of conversation. This is true, this is authentic, this is vulnerable, this is raw, and this is my story in writing. This is Tammy's story with her alcoholic father in writing. This is Karina's story with her parentified toxic family of origin. This is Dr. Laura's story of sexual assault and all of the other events that happened to her in her life in a span of about just a year and a half. It was quite intense for her. We can find ourselves in the story of others. And I said this on the panel, and I feel to say it again. I this might be too heavy for some of you. This might feel too churchy or too preachy, but I don't care, because this is the authenticity in which I live. And I hope you can meet me here. I hope you can meet me where I'm at, because we have a lot to talk about. But here's what I want to say to you, and the encouragement that I feel in my own body, which is So I went to church for years and years and years and years, and grew up in church. And the one thing, many things I heard, but the one thing that always was intriguing to me was when the scripture would talk about a mountain, that if you have belief and faith that is the size of a grain of a seed, like a seed of mustard, a mustard seed is what they say. And so a mustard seed is incredibly small. But if you have belief or faith, you can actually say to the mountain, go, and it will go, it will crumble, it will move. And I was saying this yesterday as we were sharing. I said, it's like there were these mountains inside of my forest, inside of those places where I had to hide away, where I had to retract myself because the pain was too much, where I didn't know how to integrate or interact with my own body. And in that forest, it was so dark and it was so terrible in there, but yet so safe, because anything was better than what you were experiencing outside of that forest. And so those were mountains in my life. And when I started believing, and I don't know how I believed, but I think it was just through listening to people say you can. And I started taking these risks because I really just wanted my dignity back. Don't you want your dignity back? When life kicks you in the head and people hurt you and you can't understand what is happening and why, and you feel like you've been stripped of respect and dignity, you want it back. And that's what I wanted. And so I was able to look and find a seed of belief that said, I think I can. I think I can get through this. It was just that small little opening that created an opening of light in that forest. And over time, that mountain is gone. The narrative of I'm shame, I'm not enough, I don't belong, I'm never going to make it in this world, I have to protect myself in order to be loved. No one can love me, I'm unlovable. Look what happened to me. If you find yourself there, then you can find yourself here in the space where we have conversation. So I just want to say, you matter. Our stories matter. That's why I've done the work I've done. That's why I have guests on the show with varying life stories, or their life's work is different than, we have trauma therapists and we talk about so much. You want to know, this is how I live my life and this is what I do. Join me, join my guests, go and visit my stuff, find me, because there's something for everyone. You matter, your story matters. And you can tell your narrative to go, and it will. But you got to find the belief that you are enough, that you matter.